Welcome to episode 42 of How About Them Huskies. I'm Connor, and we got the whole crew today, Matt, Andrew, and Matt. First time in a while we've had all of us here, but it's a big episode. It's the full season preview and prediction, so I feel like we all got to be here. And I think we'll just jump right into it. The goal today, we're gonna break down every player, all 12 guys. We'll talk about who they are, what they're gonna do for the team, how much they'll play, and we're getting to some award predictions at the end, maybe some MVP, freshman of the year, most improved player, stuff like that. And then finally, we're gonna make our record predictions and predict how far we think the Huskies will make it in the tournament. I feel like we're all pretty confident they can make another deep run, but we'll see at the end. Let's get into it right away. First player we're going to talk about is the guy who went off in the national championship game last year, Tristan Newton. He returns for his second year in stores in his fifth year in college basketball. I feel like he's going to really be the engine of this offense with no more Andre Jackson. He's going to be the guy, no more Jordan Hawkins either. He's going to be the main scorer on the perimeter. I'm really excited to see how he grows this year.
I really think he was the most important one to come back because obviously we lost our big three. And then, Klingon and Caravan taking that next step. But a team that wins is a team that has a true point guard. And I just think that Newton coming back was.
Yeah, Andrew has been having some technical difficulties. So, Matt, you want to jump in?
Yeah, anyways, I'll pick up where Andrew left off. Newton for me is a guy who I remember we were all a little frustrated with him to start off last year. We thought he started slow, and we thought he was a little bit better or we thought he was going to be a little bit better than what he was at first. But then as the season went on, he ended up playing a lot better. He ended up really being kind of the X factor to that championship run, having a point guard out there averaging 6, 7 assists. What was he doing in the tournament? Something like that. And, in the biggest games, giving you 10 to 12 and 8 assists. And now it's just going to be an increased role for him after we lost our two top scorers. So I really think he's going to have a big year this year.
Yeah, and I assume he'll begin to, heat up again as the season goes on, kind of play into the season. Um, maybe we're not going to get that national championship, production from him immediately, but you don't necessarily need that this year. He's not being forced into this role anymore, especially with Castle. We might see a lot of Newton at the two, but I'm really excited to see how him and Castle kind of like they're a little bit of fire and ice because Newton is like much more of a shooter compared to Castle. Castle will get to the basket. Newton will stretch the floor. So I'm pretty excited to see how those two kind of collaborate and work together and run this offense. I'd like to see how Hurley runs them too because he's full of great ideas.
Yeah, you lead me to my next point there. Obviously, last year, Andre Jackson brought up the ball a fair amount, but Newton was really the only true ball handling point guard on the floor. Now we have Castle, which allows Newton to kind of go off the ball a little bit and maybe go like not kind of like Hawkins last year, how he would like go around screens and get open for shots. I could see Newton maybe doing a little bit of that. I feel like this is kind of a little bit of a bold prediction early. I think he's a sneaky leading scorer for us this year, maybe like 15, 16 points per game. I feel like obviously you have guys like Klingon, Spencer, Caravan that could all also be up there, but I feel like Newton very easily could lead this team in scoring.
And obviously, that fifth year experience is very important. You don't see that a lot anymore, especially, once you get into March. But having a guy that's been around for as long as he has, definitely great. Definitely good to have.
Yeah, and just one more thing about Newton real quick. You're starting to see him get a lot of, national coverage and attention as one of the better point guards in the country. I don't know, you'll just be scrolling through Instagram and Bleacher Report will be talking about top 10 point guards in the country going into the season. You'll see Tristan Newton there. So obviously the expectations for him are sky high, from experts. So, I don't know. I just thought I'd add that. Kind of interesting to see that. Kind of cool to see that he's getting national attention. But yeah, that's where the expectations are right now.
All right, I think we'll jump from one of our returning starters to the other one, Alex Caravan. He was obviously started at the four pretty much every game last year except for the first one. And he's another guy that's going to take a big jump. He was on that. Matt just talked about the awards. Caravan was on the Karl Malone Award watch list, top power forward in the country. He's a great shooter. I mean, I could see him jumping from he was around, I believe, just under 10 points per game. I think he can easily get up to 13, 14 with the shots he's going to get with no more Hawkins and Sonogo. I feel like he's also improved defensively. I feel like that was one area where we thought he's like a lot of liability out there. I remember last year we were talking, is he going to guard a Bryce Hopkins when we play Providence? And I feel like this year there's no question he's improved and he's going to be able to do something like that.
Thing is with Caravan is that you often forget that he's a second-year player. At least I find myself forgetting that he's only going to be a second-year player. He just has a sense of maturity. Like he's been around, forever, a couple of years, but just his maturity and the way he plays, the way he learned throughout last season how to be more aggressive on defense, more aggressive on offense. It's just, you feel like he is like a fourth year, like a senior coming back, but he isn't. He's a second year, and I feel like he is going to take a bit of a jump, maybe up to that 14 points per game mark, where would definitely love to see him. Hopefully, he gets in there starting every game. So I'm definitely excited to see what he can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh shoot, my bad.
Anyways, what I was gonna say was, I think you're right about that. The fact that he's just such a steady presence. It's not normal when you see a freshman out there last year and you're not even thinking about him. You're not nervous when he gets the ball. He's going to make the right play. And now with just all that more experience, UConn played the most basketball in the country last year besides San Diego State, with all the tournament games. So he's got all that experience. He's got all those high pressure moments that came from that, and he didn't fold. He's just a guy who always makes the right play. He's starting to get to a point where he's a real big, sturdy body on defense. So I think he's going to have a much bigger year. And plus, I'm sure he's put a lot of work into his shooting and his ball handling in the offseason. So his offensive playmaking could only go up from last year. It wasn't much. He's kind of a spot up guy, kind of a, roll off, get a layup type of guy. But I think if, his ball handling and shot creation could step up, he'll be a guy who we see over at 12, 13 points a game. We might even start talking about the NBA soon with him.
All right, so I apologize for my technical difficulties over here, but I still want to make my point about Caravan and how we saw him progress during the season. During the beginning of the season in non-conference and even early in Big East play, I feel like he was just kind of that quiet freshman who thought he was out there to just do one thing, and then we saw him in the he would get inside, get rebounds, and even like flat-footed dunks and stuff like that. So I feel like he's definitely ready to take that next big jump into being our everyday power forward, especially with at the beginning of the season, like we have no idea how Klingon's going to be, even Samson. So I feel like he's definitely ready to be that guy.
I think now we'll jump into Klingon, the other freshman on last year's team. Everyone's predicting going to take a massive leap. Obviously, the production he had in the limited minutes, it was like something like almost 7 and 5 in 13 minutes per game, some insane stat line like that. I feel like you figure his minutes will at least be doubled this year. Obviously, he's dealing with the injury. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in the next few minutes. But I feel like this is a huge year for him. He's a preseason All-American list. I kind of feel like it's a little like I don't know the right word, unnecessary or like a stretch, because I mean he still averaged 7 points last year and you're projecting him to be this top guy. He very easily could be. I expect him to be, but I feel like it's kind of a stretch in the preseason. Maybe that's another hot take from me.
Well, he's going to be getting these starter minutes, which is a big deal because last year with Sonogo, it was, where's Klingon? A lot of the time we were wondering where's Klingon. We wanted him on the floor. So I feel like we're going to be getting a lot of Donovan Klingon this year, pending injury. But I'm excited to see him just come out and just hoop. I mean, with all the preseason hype he's getting, no Big East first team, which kind of threw me off. They didn't project him to be on the All Big East first team, which I think he'll definitely do. I feel like compared to the likes of other guys, like Kalkbrenner and such, he's better. He will play better this season with more minutes, with more opportunity, more plays written up for him. I'm excited to see how he comes out and, kind of makes the most of his starter minutes. With Sonogo gone, show what he's learned, show what he's practiced. And I think he'll definitely be first team All Big East.
Yeah, and one of the most efficient players in college basketball. He's not going to miss many shots because he's only taking shots from inside 5 feet and he's 7'20". not to mention he's real skilled, real fast. The foot injury is a little concerning because you see that with, mobile big guys a lot is they're so large and they're moving around. They build a lot of stress on their feet and, that can lead to some, issues. But, I don't want to get too caught up on this little sprain that he's got going on. I think he'll come back healthy and he'll come back and have a great year. But yeah, if you do the math on it and you see he was only getting 14 minutes a game last year, or 13, 14, however many it was, and then you basically double that, we should see a huge, huge uptick in production from him. And I really think he could be one of the best centers in the country. I don't think he can be the best center in the country, but definitely the Big East for sure. We definitely got one of those guys in the Big East where we don't have to worry about the front court, no matter who we're playing. We know we can compete at the front court. So I think the most important part to this team, probably our best player, if we're being realistic. And yeah, be lucky if we get him back for another year after this.
Yeah, I do feel like this is definitely the year that he's going to take his big step. The awards, I've always thought that the preseason teams, the award teams, those really mean nothing to me because they're predictions. I don't think it means anything. I mean, I don't think Tyler Kolek's going to be that good, and they've got him on the All-American team for the entire NCAA. So I just really don't think that these awards watch list, whatever. I don't think they really mean much because Hawkins wasn't on much, I don't believe, last year, and he was still a lottery pick. So I don't really pay attention to those, but I do think that this is the year that he takes his big step towards the NBA. But I do think that he still is a little bit raw. He was very good last year, but I do think that to be a dominant center, he's got some things to work on. But I think Hurley's got it under control for sure. But he's going to be our biggest our biggest piece per se in this year's team for sure.
Yeah, I'll get to the injury a little bit here. Obviously, it's a foot thing with him. It happened, I believe, the timetable was early October, and it was like 3 to 4 weeks initially. But at the blue white night on Wednesday, he didn't participate in any of the scrimmages or drills. He shot around beforehand. He was taking threes, which that might be a thing this year too. Who knows? He's making them, so maybe he'll take them in game. But he was shooting around, and he, like I said, he didn't play in any of the drills. And afterwards, after everyone left, I saw he was trying to do some sprints from one baseline to the other, and it was a struggle like a quarter of the way in for him. He was hurt, and I could tell. So in 10 days when they play Northern Arizona, I honestly doubt he'll be out there, but luckily you have 2 weeks after that first game until your first one that really matters against Indiana. I feel like Hurley and the staff, they want him to heal up fully for that. So I feel like there's a solid chance you won't see him the first 4 games, however many there are before then. We'll move on to guys who are likely coming off the bench this year. Well, if I forgot if I mentioned, we're starting with the returning players, then to the transfer. There's only one, then the freshman. So moving on to Hassan Diarra, the backup point guard last year, really the energy guy for us. I feel like he's going to be a true leader of this team, being on the roster last year. He's a lockdown defender. And I think it's also huge that our bench is pretty much him and a bunch of freshmen. So having him mentor those guys that are coming off the bench is very crucial. I feel like he's the type of guy that's going to be really good in that role.
Yeah, and I'm just really glad Haas came back for another year. And we know exactly what we're going to get from him. The defensive intensity, not much scoring, but he'll hit his open threes when he needs to. He passes the ball well. He's actually pretty good in the pick and roll for a backup point guard. He's a guy who could really substitute in there and still run an offense. And that his defensive intensity is going to be there and his hands are going to be active. So just delighted to have that dude back for another year. And he's a type of guy that you need coming off the bench on a good team.
Yeah, he's definitely the perfect little role player. He comes in, he doesn't, overplay his ability. He doesn't try too much, he doesn't do too much. He just does what he's supposed to do. And coming off the bench, that's fantastic. Having a guy like that who could just come in and play his role, play some great defense, hit a three or two, and then, just come out. He won't shoot any shots that he knows that, coach wouldn't like or that aren't his shots. It's great to have a guy like that who especially will mentor the younger guys.
Yeah, really. You need that toughness, like especially say your freshman Castle, he's struggling early defensively against a guy like Tyler Kolek, one of the better guards in the conference. You bring in Diarra to completely disrupt what's going on there. I feel like that's humongous. And like I mentioned, I'll reiterate it, the experience. I mean, he kind of fell out of the rotation come Final Four national championship time, but he was one of our 9 guys all year long. He made some starts. He started a game in the Big East tournament. It's just the experience is huge to bring back. You don't really see it often. National championship team to return half the rotation pretty much. And I feel like I'm really excited to see him. He's not gonna put up 10 points per game, but he's gonna play his role well. And the next guy, another real wild card, Samson Johnson. Last year started the first game, got hurt, didn't come back until the winter, and he really wasn't in the rotation at all after that. He's probably going to end up being our starting center for the first couple of weeks if Klingen's out, which I'm fine with. He's earned that role. I feel like he's due for a breakout year.
Yeah,
I
and
mean, seeing the clips, man, holy. Like seeing the clips with him, I mean, he looks like he's put on a bunch of muscle and he looks like he he's a weird player. Like I don't mean that in a mean way, but he's always been like since a freshman, he was playing a little bit. You know, people thought he would transfer. Then last year, everybody saw him in the starting lineup, so they thought that he had gotten a lot better. Then he got hurt and really didn't play much. So I think this is his big year. You know, I don't know if he's quite NBA guy, but I think he is going to play a really big role, especially coming off the bench once Clean's back.
yeah, and last year, Klingon got the opportunity because Samson Johnson had the foot injury, and this year Samson Johnson's going to get the opportunity because Klingon has the foot injury, which is a little funny, but obviously Sonogo's gone, so Johnson's kind of getting catapulted into a bigger role here. And you said it, Connor, he's a wild card. No idea what to expect from him, but only heard good things about him. You see the official team account posting their little practice highlight reels, and you always see Samson Johnson getting dunks. You even see him hitting a jumper. So I think he's going to be a good player, and we've kind of just been stashing him away. There hasn't really been minutes for him, but I think now that there's minutes for him, he's gonna have a good year. I don't, he'll at least get an increase in minutes. I can't really comment on whether or not he'll be a great player for us or not, but definitely an increase in minutes is something to look for from him.
Yeah, and we really can't forget that he was our opening night starter last year, and he did get hurt, and Alex Caravan came in and kind of stole the show. So it was a little bit unfortunate, but I'm excited to see what he does with his minutes this year for sure.
Yeah, moving on now from Sampson to the last returner, a guy who was not in the rotation once last year, but I feel like has a slight chance to crack it this year. Apostolos Rumaglu. Obviously, we brought in a couple of guys like him, Yaron Hassoun. Hassoun let transfer, but Apostolos stayed. And I mean, just looking at him physically, I mean, he's 6'7", 6'8", legit 6'8". He can shoot the ball. He's been in the system for a year. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised, especially in these first few games, to see him get some run just to see what he can do. I mean, especially with his competition being a bunch of freshmen who play the similar position, I feel like Hurley tends to stray away from freshmen sometimes. I mean, last year was the exception with Klingon and Caravan, but I feel like there's a chance Apostolos could get some run. He's a solid player, but he just last year there was no chance he was getting any playing time. And you guys got any thoughts on Apostolos? Not too surprised, but we'll move on. That's no disrespect to him. It's just there's not much to say, but hopefully there will be much to say this time next year when he's our starting small forward, averaging 25 a game. We'll go to our only transfer. Cam Spencer came over from Rutgers. He played at Loyola, Maryland for a few years prior to that. He's the way we've been describing him on this podcast. He's not Jordan Hawkins. He's not Joey Calcaterra. He's right in the middle. He's a shooter. He's going to get you double-digit points per game. He's like I mentioned, the only transfer that Hurley brought in, but Hurley knows his transfers like we saw last year. So he definitely wouldn't pick a guy out of nowhere that wouldn't help the team. He's in his 5th year. He's going to be a starter. I'm really excited to see how he plays.
Yeah, and having a guy like that, that we've seen before, sort of in a way, that can come in, come off screens, hit some big shots. It's very important. You need guys like that to hit shots, especially when it comes time, for March Madness. You need a guy who's going to come in and hit threes. teams that shoot the three well win the big games. So I'm excited to see how much of an impact he has. I'm not too familiar with, his game yet, but I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah, and I think what people forget about him is he's not just a 3-point guy, he's a 3-and-D guy. I think he led the Big Ten in steals. I'll check on that real quick. I'll check on that. Well, he led the Patriot League in steals, Big Ten Patriot League, same thing. But I think he was also high up there in the Big Ten in his lone year there with Rutgers. But yeah, not only is he going to be giving us, probably a good 11, 12 a game, spacing the floor a lot, opening up lanes for us, but he might even get 2 steals for us. And he's also, kind of a wider guy, kind of a stronger guy who could get down and, not too many guards could get past him. So the defensive backcourt is looking like it might be able to make some plays, get some steals, and not to mention this guy's going to bring some spacing that is much needed.
Yeah, he's like the ultimate basketball guy. You look on Instagram, you're not finding a Cam Spencer account. He's not on social media like that. He's just a clutch shooter. In the blue-white game, like I mentioned, they did 3 scrimmages. In the final one, he was on Team Blue at the time. They were down by 3 with like 20 seconds left, and they ran the offense, and he drilled a 3 with 0.5 seconds left to tie the game. That's the type of guy that he's going to be for this team, taking and making those clutch shots. And with no more Hawkins, who was that guy last year, remember in the title game when San Diego State came back, Hawkins hit that clutch 3 to really keep us in the lead. I feel like Spencer's the type of guy like that it's gonna make sure we stay in all these games. Now we're gonna move on to the freshman class, the Fab Five as they've been called. We'll start with Stephon Castle, who's the top guy out of the 5. He's the top recruit. He's going to be a lottery pick, most likely a one and done, which it's cool to see a one and done at UConn. We haven't really seen too many recently. I feel like he's a real underrated defender. I feel like we talk about, oh, he's a great playmaker. He can slash, he can score, but I feel like his defense is what stuck out to me when I watched him play. And I feel like I mentioned, the playmaking with Andre Jackson gone, we have a void there as the second playmaker behind Tristan Newton, or along with Tristan Newton. He's going to fit that role perfectly.
Well, yeah, just that large 6'6" frame immediately is a boost on defense, especially in today's game where there are guys like Tyler Kolek dominating the Big East, smaller, shiftier guards. It's great to have a bigger guard who can come in and, guard 3 positions if you need him to. And especially the playmaking, that's a big deal as well, because who's going to stop him? I mean, if he just gets into the paint, it opens up the floor so much for guys like Spencer and Caravan and, possibly even Klingon to shoot threes. So he's going to be a huge X factor. I feel like how we kind of had to figure out Andre Jackson throughout last year and figure out, better ways to use his just like raw ability. We're going to be finding out different ways to use Tristan Newton. I goofed. Stephon Castle all season long.
Yeah, and he's just an NBA guard. He's one of those guys who you see the direction the NBA is moving in now. And I say this every time we talk about big guards on the show, but you see the direction the NBA is moving in. It's these 6'6", 6'7" guys who could handle and pass the ball and play defense that are at a premium right now. Think Amen and Asar Thompson. I'm not saying this guy is them, but I'm saying he's the same prototype that they are. And obviously NBA scouts are all over that. And obviously he's going to contribute a lot to our team if, NBA scouts are going to be all over him. It is kind of fun having these guys come in. They play a couple years, but at the same time, it is fun having guys that are going to come in here and be lottery picks, first round picks. And obviously that means he's going to be able to contribute to the team. So hopefully we end up having another particular one and done next year, but it's going to be fun. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I mean, I think Castle is just going to be exactly like Jackson in so many ways. I mean, he's got almost the same build as him. I've seen he's not the greatest shooter in the world, much better at defense, passing like Jackson is. But I am really excited because this is our, we've obviously had Book Knight and Hawkins be lottery picks, and then Jackson, Sonogo are with NBA teams now. Callie's in the G League. So we've had guys that have gone pro, but we've never had a guy who's been projected to be a lottery pick after his first season. So I'm really excited. honestly for the hype that he's going to bring to these games, because a lot of people will be going to these games just to see him play. So I'm excited for the hype he's going to bring to the program as well as his skill set.
All right, the next guy we're going to talk about is Solo Ball, Solomon Ball. I feel like after Castle, he's the next guy when it comes to minutes who's going to play the most for this team. He's a crazy athletic. He's only like 6'3", 6'4", but he can jump out of the gym. It's a nice lefty stroke. I feel like he's a guy like he's a sneaky, like he could be better than Castle this year production wise. I feel like he's that good. Hurley and the staff believe so as well. He's another guy. I've said this pretty much everyone. I'm really excited to see Solo Ball.
Yeah, I've been saying this too. If you go back to our previous episodes, I've been really high on him. I just think his athletic ability is just unmatched. I feel like he'll definitely be our, highest flyer on the team this year, 100%. He's gonna make an impact. Coming off the bench too, I feel like, he could earn starter stripes through the year. I doubt it. I bet you he comes off the bench all year, but he is going to just be a transcendent talent in the fact that you could just throw the ball to him just up in the air and he'll go get it and he'll just throw it down, or he can make a play. He can beat a defender. He's super quick. I feel like he's going to be sneaky 10-point a game guy.
And he almost goes under the radar because of Castle and everything else surrounding the program when we were recruiting him. He definitely goes under the radar because you take Castle out of this recruiting class, then Solo Ball is the best player in this recruiting class. And it's still a good recruiting class, even if you take Castle out. So, definitely is a guy who you're not hearing about as much as you should, but, start hearing about him because he's going to be a good player for us. And, he's probably going to be around longer than Castle. And, he might be one of the guys that ends up being a pillar of another deep tournament run. So, definitely keep an eye out for him because I don't think he's getting talked about as much as he should.
And he's a guy you really can't compare him to. Like, we've made comparisons for almost every guy here. We really can't compare him to anybody because we've never had a player like him. I mean, you can say that he's kind of like Vital, but I feel like a lot more athletic than Vital. Like, he's just a weird player to kind of try to compare. But I'm really excited for him, and I do agree with Connor that his production wise, this is going to get taken the wrong way. I'm 100% certain of it. But his production wise could be way better than Castle's because he's just going to be off the bench, and I feel like contributing more as if when Castle's in the starting five. He won't contribute a ton, but I think Ball will definitely contribute a lot off the bench, and I'm excited to see the step he takes this year.
With Hassan Diarra, we mentioned how he's the energy off the bench on the defensive end. I feel like Solo Ball's the opposite. He's like, oh, the offense is struggling. We need a quick bucket or two. We're going to go to Solo, and he can wake up the offense. I feel like he's perfect for that role. We'll move to a guy who played with Solo Ball. I believe it was AAU or something like that. I don't remember exactly what, but Jaden Ross. He's a great build for a wing, very lengthy, can shoot the ball. I think he's the best shooter among these 5 freshmen for sure. I feel like because of that, I think he will be in the rotation right away. Like I mentioned, this entire bench is pretty much freshmen. I don't think they're all going to see minutes, especially once you get to those bigger games. I feel like after watching Jaden Ross for the past few months, I feel like he is a guy that will be in the rotation. And like the defense for him, it's not his main thing, but I feel like a raw freshman like that, the defense will come over time, especially in Dan Hurley's system.
He's a guy who has drawn comparisons from experts, and by experts I mean the How About Them Huskies podcast, to guys like Andrea Jackson and Tyrese Maxey, just a big wiry wing who's going to be stealing the ball, dunking it all over the place. He's a little more of a project than the other two, but he's definitely going to be a guy who's around the program, and he has a really bright future, super athletic, like I said.
All right, I think we'll move on to the other wing among our freshmen, Jalen Stewart. He, like we mentioned, Sampson was a wild card. I feel like Jalen Stewart among these 5 guys is the wild card of the group. He missed a lot of time in the summer. He didn't play on that Europe trip at all. He's been banged up, but I feel like he has a chance to sneak into the rotation. I feel like if it's a competition between Ross and Stewart, I feel like edge Ross right now. But he's not as good of a shooter as Ross, but he's still, I think, the second or third best shooter among these freshmen. He's a confident finisher. He had a couple of and ones in the blue white scrimmage. I feel like he's just a wild card. I'll leave it at that. I'm confident he's a guy that's going to be around a few years. He also could be a guy that goes off and is a 2 year to the NBA guy. You don't know what you're going to get with him.
My thing is that there's just so many guys on the squad this year that not everybody's going to be able to get a lot of run. Of course, we'd love to see, all the freshmen play, have a starting five and a bench five and run 10 men, but that's not how Hurley's going to do it. He'll definitely roll with like 7 or 8 guys, and the rest will kind of get, left out, maybe preseason minutes, but I'm not entirely sure how much he's going to play. Of course, I'd love to see him get an opportunity, and we've seen guys who didn't have much opportunity at the start of the year kind of play into it, kind of Isaiah Whaley-esque, but I'm just more curious to see how he played, like how much he plays, just in terms of how Hurley's going to run the rotation. Because if Hurley wants a bigger rotation, I'm sure we'll see more of him.
Yeah, you look at his position. Ross is more of like I guess if you're going to put one of the true natural positions, shooting guard slash small forward. I feel like Stewart's more of a small forward slash power forward type of guy, which we're kind of thin in the front court, which could lead to his advantage. I feel like behind Caravan at the 4, there's no true backup power forward because Sampson's going to be the backup center for Klingon. So I feel like maybe there he can sneak in, but like you said, Matt, I feel like there's just a lot of guys and not enough playing time to be had. And we got one more guy, another guy who may not see too much time out of the gate, but he also could. I mean, with the injury to Klingon, I feel like this guy Yusuf Singare could be a factor in the first couple of weeks. He's a 6'10", he's strong and defined. It's going to be hard to keep a guy out of the rotation when you look at him. He's just so big, so athletic. He's a great rebounder. I feel like this is the second time Ahmed and Azar Thompson are being mentioned in this episode in the OTE league. Singare played in last year, the league that sent 2 guys to the top 5 of the NBA draft. Singare led them in rebounds per game, so that's certainly something. He's a great rebounder. I feel like he's a little raw though. I mean, he hasn't really played against guys, the competition of the Big East, the big men. You look at Kalkbrenner, you look at all these guys, even Klingon in practice, all these good big men. I feel like it's going to take some time to get adjusted to that, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's a factor in this team all year.
And I saw him kind of arguing that Raw title. I'm not sure it's his favorite thing in the world. I think he feels like he is a solid, starting big man. Maybe in his head, we have no idea what he's thinking, but he has a lot of experience. He's played with a lot of great players, which is my big thing with him. He played with Sonogo back in high school, if I'm correct. And playing with the Sarnam and Thompson, those guys are NBA guys. He is very experienced, and he probably learned a lot from Adama. I guarantee you they talk, and they talked last year, and they have been discussing. I wouldn't be surprised if there were practices there where they both got in, and Sonogo kind of, taught him a few things. I'm really excited to see, maybe not this year, but definitely next season, what he can bring to the table, because he kind of gives me that Adama Sonogo vibe, if you will, just that big physical presence who's just going to get you buckets in the paint, soft touch. I just want to see him learn this year. This is a big learning year for him because he could be a big piece on a national championship team, in my honest opinion. Maybe not this year, but a year or two down the line.
All right, I think now we're gonna make some rotation predictions real quick. I feel like it'll be easier just to say who's not going to be in. Personally, we all may agree. I feel like it's going to be a 9-man rotation for the most part. I think the odd ones out are Yusuf Singare, Rumaglu, and Jalen Stewart, in my opinion. What do you guys agree? What do you think it's going to look like?
I think a lot of it has to do with preseason, what we see in preseason, because Hurley has to kind of learn these guys in a way and learn where they're going to go and learn where everyone can fit in. And I feel like we're going to learn a lot about the team through preseason. We'll see guys play in game 1 who honestly probably won't play in game 2 or game 3. or we'll see guys who don't play in game 1 come in game 2 and game 3. And I feel like it's just going to be a feeling out process because there's just so much talent on this team that's just so unknown. If you look back like 2 or 3 years ago to the teams that we built with a Cook, we had Brendan Adams, we had all these guys who were end of the bench guys sort of in a way, but were much better than typical guys that we have coming off the bench. I feel like this year it's going to kind of be like that, but we are all unsure about what's coming off the end of the bench. We haven't seen these guys play at the college level. I feel like we're just going to be learning as the season goes on. It's going to be a learning process. Teams obviously slump like we did last January, but hopefully by March, we have a pretty solid idea of who these guys are, and we can put out the best lineup possible, to get us success in the tournament, whether that's 7 guys or whether that's 10 guys. I just am curious to see.
And I think we have the starting 5. Pretty good idea. Once Klingen's healthy, I think we're gonna see Newton, Castle, Spencer, Caravan, and Klingen. Except I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Hurley didn't start Castle at first. I don't know, maybe just like a freshman type of thing, but at the same time, I don't know who else we would turn to. And then, off the bench, we're obviously gonna have Diarra. Then we'll probably see a little bit of solo ball. And then we're also going to see some Samson Johnson this year, like we said earlier. But, then where do you go? That's an 8-man rotation right there. Unless I'm missing someone, where do you go after that? What happens when someone gets injured? What happens when someone's not having a good game? That's what they're going to need to start figuring out. And obviously, as the course of the season plays out, they'll figure that out. But, the sooner they get that figured out, the better.
I think it'll be matchup based, in all honesty. You play a team like Providence, who this year, with the departure of Croswell, doesn't really have a defined big per se. You could go more guard play off the bench with Ball, Ross, and Stewart, even like the forwards, and Singari might not play that game, but maybe in a game against Creighton, if you really need to filter in the bigs, maybe Singare, Sampson, and Klingen play that game, but a guy like Ross and Stewart doesn't, So I just think with this team with so much depth at all positions, I really think the rotation won't be defined, and it'll 100% be matchup based.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, just throw different bodies at people in a matchup like that. Like you mentioned, Kalkbrenner. If Klingen's struggling or if Sampson's struggling, throw Yusuf out there. See what he's got. What do you got to lose? I think now we're gonna get to a fun portion. We're gonna do some preseason award predictions. I got 5 categories here. We got MVP, Rookie of the Year, or Freshman of the Year, whatever you want to call it. I called it Rookie. Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved Player of the Year, and the Sixth Man of the Year. And I was thinking how I want to do this. I feel like we're going to do it no explanation style. We're just going to go around, say a name, and do it just to see. I don't know. It's just an interesting little idea I had. We'll go backwards. We'll start Sixth Man of the Year. You guys can decide the order. Just say a name, and that's it. I'll go first. And I think it's Solo Ball.
Yeah, give me Hassan Diarra. I think he takes a big step.
I'm gonna roll with Solo Ball too. Raw freshman.
Yep, I'm going with Solo.
All right, we got Most Improved Player, Donovan Klingen.
Samson Johnson.
I was gonna say Sampson as well.
I'm gonna go Caravan.
Defensive Player of the Year, Stefan Castle.
Donovan Klingen.
Donovan Klingen. It's Donovan Klingen.
Yeah, it's Klingen. No shot. It's not.
Little controversy there, Connor.
Yeah, I liked what I saw. All right, focus. Rookie of the Year, Stefan Castle.
Yeah.
So
Unanimous.
across the board.
100%. I don't know. I can't take Solo Ball just to be different. I'm taking Castle.
An MVP. I want to go last on this one.
Tristan Newton.
I'm gonna go with Klingen.
This is tough. I gotta go. Honestly, I think I'm gonna go Newton too. I think he's got a lot to prove last year. He's gonna try to go to the draft, so I've got Newton.
You see, I said I wanted to go last, expecting you all to say Klingen because I'm also saying Tristan Newton. But Yeah, I feel like no explanation, no explanation. I'm not going to get into it.
Wow.
And now we'll just do some record predictions. We'll wrap it up here. Not really record, but what do you think the ceiling of this team is, like Big East play and NCAA tournament? I guess I feel like they can make a run to the Big East final. It's going to be tough with all these freshmen to win it, but I feel like by then they'll be a little more seasoned. I feel like they definitely have the potential to win the Big East tournament, but I think at least a trip to the final. And I feel like this group is definitely capable of getting back to the Final Four. I feel like at least a second weekend appearance, Sweet 16, Elite Eight, but I feel like they could definitely get to the Final Four.
I'd say our ceiling Big East wise was definitely Big East champions. Our floor, uh, probably around fourth place, I'd say. We usually dangle around fifth to first all season long, but I'd say we have a little bit of a higher floor this year, just finishing around fourth place. I think we could definitely, especially with the guys that we have the experience that we have, push for a second weekend appearance in March. Um, Obviously having Newton and Caravan and all these guys, a top freshman and Stephon Castle and just a solid rotation. I feel like we definitely are bound to make a deep run again, a semi-deep run.
Yeah, and I think the ceiling of this team is unlimited. I'm not going to put a ceiling on them. I really think, you know, it is a little biased because obviously we're UConn fans here. We're on this podcast because we're UConn fans, but the talent's there again. The continuity is going to be there because we're returning so many rotation guys from last year. So I really think I'm not going to put a ceiling on this team. The ceiling for this team is a national championship and a Big East championship. But that being said, I also don't think the floor is very low for this team. Like we were saying, I think the lowest they could end up in the Big East is fourth. Maybe they lose in the semifinals, definitely win in the quarterfinal. I don't see one of those lower seeded teams beating us in the quarterfinal. But, I think the ceiling is, maybe you lose in the Big East semifinal to a good team like Creighton or Villanova. And then, like I said, in national tournament, anything could happen. I really think, this team could do great things.
Yeah, I mean, it is really hard to put a ceiling on any team because the I mean, like it's a weird way to put it, but you really can't put a ceiling because of what happened last year. I mean, I don't think any of us really expected UConn to win the entire thing. We kind of thought that last year was going to be a year where we just see what everybody's really made of because of Castle coming in, but we went and won it all last year. I think that we're definitely a top three Big East team. There's no doubt about that. But I don't see us winning the Big East tournament still, sadly. I just feel like I don't think we can win that tournament. And it sucks, but I see us going way further in March than in the Big East tournament. I think maybe we might even lose in the first round of the Big East tournament if we run into a tough team. But I still see us going to at least the Elite Eight in March this year. But I don't think the Big East tournament is our thing this year.
We've always had our struggles in the Big East. The Big East tournament is the big one. I want to see us win this year. We got
Yeah.
March Madness last year. I just want to win the Big East. I want to have those bragging rights over everybody else.
And the Big East is probably the hardest league to win in basketball when you factor in, crowd noise and just straight talent and grittiness of the teams. But yeah, I think that's the goal. We won the national championship last year. You don't have to win a national championship every year. But, one thing you want to see is continued dominance of your league. You're not going to win the national championship every year, but as long as you're dominating your league, you're doing something right and you're giving yourself a shot to.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the toughest conference, and honestly, we were probably going to do this later, but sneak preview, my Big East tournament champion, the St. John's Red Storm. But more explanation on that'll come later.
Yeah, I feel like with this Big East tournament, it's almost good to lose in a tournament setting early on. Like we saw last year, they lost to Marquette. I mean, it's tough if you win the Big East tournament and obviously you go on to win the national title. That's at least 10, 11 straight wins in a row, which that's really hard to do. It's good to get a loss in there. Obviously, you want to win it, but I agree. It's going to be tough, especially in the Big East. Like we won the national championship last year, and the preseason poll comes after the Big East. We didn't get a single first place vote. That's how tough it's going to be. I mean, I was surprised to see that myself. Marquette got 7 and Creighton got 11. I assume it's the coaches or it's got to be the coaches that vote on that, and you can't vote for yourself, I assume. But
What I
that
think,
was very
yeah.
surprising to see. And I think that'll just about do it here. Episode 42 is kind of a longer one, a preview of the season. It's got to be long. It's a lot to talk about, a lot of guys, awards to hand out. It's going to be a really fun season this year for the Huskies. Obviously, may not top last year, but the talent, it's going to be really enjoyable to watch. And I feel like we're gonna try to get a proper Northern Arizona preview out for you guys. We'll know more about Klingon by then, and we'll know more about a lot of things. So look for another episode before the season starts, maybe the day of or day before. And yeah,
Yeah, and just one more thing before we go. By the time we record again, we'll probably have Cooper Flagg's decision. So I don't want to jinx anything, but obviously that's a big deal. We're in his top 3, so we'll see what happens there.
yeah. Unfortunately, we lost out on Pat Nagong, but I feel like there's bigger fish in the sea, Cooper Flag. But it's unfortunate to see. Flag will have decided most likely by our next episode. We'll talk about it either a lot, or we'll mention he's a Duke. It's one or the other. So yeah, stay tuned for another episode in about less than 2 weeks, obviously, for the season. Thanks for watching.